All right, listeners, today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the 2024 Yamaha FZ-09.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, we've got an awesome blog post that breaks down everything about this bike. Like, we're talking engine performance, handling, technology, even compares it to its rivals. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll know if the FZ-09 is the right ride for you.
Sounds like a plan. I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, perfect. So this blog post really hypes up the FZ-09's 847cc three-cylinder engine, 115 horsepower. It's a beast. But they're also talking about this CP3 engine technology. What's so special about that?
Yeah, the CP3 engine, it's not just about raw power. It's about how that power is delivered.
Yeah.
Yamaha designed it for this smooth, linear acceleration. It makes the bike feel really connected to you.
Okay, so it's not going to feel jerky or like it's going to like buck you off or something.
Exactly. It's that smooth wave of power pushing you forward instead of like sudden jolt.
That's a good way to put it. And this blog post also talks about how lightweight the FZ-09 is, something like 189 kilograms. How does that translate to the actual riding experience?
Right. Oh, it makes a huge difference. Think of it this way. Some bikes are like wrestling a bear.
Yeah.
But the FZ-09, it's more like dancing with a partner. It's light, it's agile, you can really flick it around.
So you're not fighting the bike, you're working with it.
Exactly. It becomes an extension of your own body.
And to fine-tune that connection even more, the FZ-09 has this fully adjustable suspension. Now, I'll admit, suspension stuff kind of goes over my head sometimes. Break it down for me.
Sure. So think of it like this. One day you might want to cruise on some nice smooth roads, just enjoy the scenery. But the next day, you might be feeling a little more adventurous and want to hit some twisty back roads. Well, with adjustable suspension, you can literally dial in the perfect settings for each scenario.
So it's not just a one-size-fits-all setup. You can customize it.
Right. You can adjust how much weight the suspension is carrying, how quickly it bounces back, even how it handles bumps. It's all about finding that sweet spot for your ride.
That's really cool. It's like the bike can transform depending on what you need it to do. But let's move on to the tech, because this bike isn't just about raw performance, is it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yamaha packed the FZ-09 with some really cool tech features. We're talking ride modes, traction control, ABS. It's all there.
All right, so let's break those down, because I know some people might not be familiar with all that.
Okay, so ride modes, they let you change how the engine responds. You can have a more aggressive setting for sporty riding, or a more relaxed setting for commuting, or maybe if the weather's bad.
So it's like having multiple bikes in one almost.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's traction control, which is really helpful for safety. Basically, it helps prevent the rear wheel from spinning out if you hit a flick spot or accelerate too hard.
That sounds like a lifesaver, especially for newer riders.
Yeah, it can really help you stay in control. And then we have ABS, which is all about braking. It prevents your wheels from locking up when you brake hard, so you're less likely to skid.
So it's all about staying safe even when you're pushing the bike to its limits.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
Yamaha has done a great job balancing performance and safety with the FZ-09.
Now let's talk about something that might surprise people, the price.
Yes, the FZ-09 comes in at $8,999, which is very competitive, especially for what you're getting.
Yeah, the blog post compares it to some other bikes in its class, like the Kawasaki Z900, the Suzuki GSX 750, and the Honda CB650R. Let's start with that Kawasaki. How does the FZ-09 stack up against that one?
Well, the Z900, it's a powerhouse. That is a larger engine. 948cc produces 125 horsepower. But that extra power comes with some trade-offs. It's heavier than the FZ-09 by about 21 kilograms. And it's a bit more expensive, so it really depends on what you're looking for.
Okay, so more power, but you pay for it in weight and price.
Exactly.
All right, how about the Suzuki GSS 750? Where does that one fall?
The GSX 750, it's a solid performer. It has a 749cc engine, puts out 112 horsepower. It's reliable, but it's a bit more basic than the FZ-09 in terms of features and technology. It doesn't have those fancy ride modes or the super sophisticated suspension.
So it's more of a traditional no-frills kind of bike.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, so the FZ-09 definitely has a tech advantage there. And lastly, we have the Honda CB650R. This one is known for being a bit more budget-friendly, right?
Yes, the CB650R comes in at $8,699. So it's a little less expensive than the FZ-09.
So what are the compromises there to get that lower price?
Well, it has a smaller engine, 649cc, and produces 94 horsepower, so less power overall. And it also doesn't have the adjustable suspension that the FZ-09 offers.
So it really comes down to what you prioritize. Is it the power and customization, or is it that lower price point?
Exactly, and I think that's what makes this comparison so interesting. There's no clear winner. It all depends on what you as a rider are looking for in a bike.
I like that it's not about which bike is objectively the best. It's about finding the best fit.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the good stuff, the power, the handling, the tech, the price, but this blog post also mentions a few drawbacks. Let's get into those.
Sure. So one thing they mentioned is that the seat on the SE09 can be a bit firm.
Okay, so maybe not the best for those long rides.
Probably not. And it also doesn't offer much wind protection because it's a naked bike.
So you're going to feel the wind at higher speeds.
You will. And the fuel economy is decent, but not the best in its class.
Mm.
And some riders might find the styling a little bit basic or understated.
Ah, styling. That's always a subjective one.
Definitely some people like that more aggressive look, while others prefer something more refined.
So we've got a firm seat wind in your face and not the greatest mileage.
Yeah.
Are these deal breakers or are they just things to be aware of?
I think it really depends on your riding style and your priorities. If you're mostly doing shorter rides and you prioritize agility and performance, those things might not be a big deal. But if you're planning on long-distance touring, yeah, those things might be a bit more of a factor.
That makes sense. So it's all about knowing what you want from the bike.
Exactly.
All right, so we've talked about the good, the bad, and the maybe not so stylish. So based on all that, who do you think is the ideal rider for this bike? Who is the FZ-09 made for?
That's a great question. I think the ideal FZ-09 rider is someone who loves that feeling of pure connection with the road. You know, they want to feel the engine. They want to feel the bike move beneath them. They want to be fully engaged in the ride. They're probably not doing a ton of long-distance touring, but they love hitting those twisty roads, carving up canyons.
So it's for the rider who enjoys the journey just as much as the destination.
Exactly. And they're also looking for a bike that offers a lot of performance and features without breaking the bank.
It's that perfect balance of performance value and that pure joy of riding.
You got it.
I love it. Okay, so that's a great overview of the FZ-09. But before we move on, I want to know, do you see yourself riding this bike?
That's a good question. Let me think about that for a second.
So I've been thinking about it, and honestly, the FZ-09 sounds pretty tempting.
Yeah, so it's definitely got a lot going for it.
But I'm curious, we've talked about all the specs and features and comparisons, but what does all that actually mean for someone who's like seriously thinking about buying this bike?
Well, I think it really comes down to the experience, the feeling you get when you're riding it.
You're talking about that feeling of like freedom and excitement.
Exactly. It's the wind in your face, the sound of the engine, the way the bike leans into corners.
Yeah, it's almost like a connection between you and the machine.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the FZ-09, it really encourages that connection. It wants to be ridden hard. It wants to be pushed to its limits.
And it sounds like it can handle it too, but you know me, I always got to play devil's advocate a little. We talked about those drawbacks, the firm seat, the lack of wind protection, the fuel economy. How much do those things actually matter?
Well, those are definitely things to consider, but I don't think they're automatic deal breakers. It really depends on how you plan to use the bike.
So like if you're just commuting or doing short rides, it's probably not a big deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're planning on doing a lot of long-distance touring, you might want to think twice, or at least look into some aftermarket options.
Yeah.
There are comfortable seats and windscreens available.
Right, so you can kind of customize it to fit your needs.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the things that makes the FZ-09 so appealing. It's versatile.
So it's not just a one-trick pony. It can be a fun weekend bike, a commuter, even a light touring bike.
Exactly. It can kind of grow with you as a rider.
I like that. So it's not just for experienced riders. It can also be a good bike for beginners.
Yeah, I think so, especially with all the safety features. It has like traction control and ABS.
That definitely gives newer riders some peace of mind.
For sure. And, looking at the bigger picture, what really impresses me is how much value the FZ-09 offers.
Yeah, for the price, you're getting a lot of performance and technology.
You really are. It's a well-rounded package.
And speaking of getting the full picture, it's important to remember that this blog post is just one perspective. There are tons of other resources out there, reviews, videos, forums.
Right. You should always do your research before buying any bike.
Definitely talk to other riders, get their opinions, maybe even test ride a few different bikes.
That's the best way to find the perfect bike for you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about the FZ-09, but I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder. If you were to hop on this bike right now, where would you go? What road would you ride?
Ooh, that's a good one. For me, it would have to be some winding mountain road.
Hmm.
Lots of twists and turns and elevation changes somewhere. I could really test the FZ-09's handling.
I can picture the scenery, the sound of the engine, the feeling of leaning into those corners.
Sounds pretty amazing, right?
It does. But the cool thing about a bike like the FZ-09 is it's not just for those epic rides.
Right, it can be just as fun on city streets or back roads.
It's all about the experience.
Exactly.
So, listener, we've given you a lot to think about. Now it's your turn. Where would you take the FZ-09?
What kind of adventure would you have?
We'll give you a minute to ponder that. And when we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of the 2024 Yamaha FZ-09.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It's time to wrap up our deep dive into the 2024 Yamaha FZ-09.
I feel like I'm ready to go test ride one right now. Yeah, me too. But let's do a quick recap before we send everyone out to the dealerships. So we started by talking about that powerful 847cc engine with CP3 technology, smooth power delivery, tons of torque, really impressive stuff.
Yeah, that engine is definitely a highlight.
Then we talked about how the FZ-09's lightweight design makes it so agile and fun to handle. 189 kilograms, that's pretty light for a bike in this class.
It makes a huge difference in the way the bike feels.
And don't forget about that fully adjustable suspension. You can really fine-tune the bike to match your riding style and the conditions.
It's like having a custom-built bike without the custom price tag.
Exactly. And of course, we talked about all the tech features, ride modes, traction control, ABS. Yamaha really packed this bike with goodies.
It's a really well-rounded package, especially when you consider the price.
Yeah, we talked about how the FZ-09 comes in at $8,999, which is a really competitive price point, especially when you compare it to some of the other bikes we discussed, like the Kawasaki Z900, the Suzuki GSX S750, the Honda CB650R. They're all great bikes in their own right, but the FZ-09 really holds its own.
It definitely punches above its weight class.
Now, we also have to acknowledge that the FZ-09 isn't perfect. We talked about the firm seat, the lack of wind protection, the so-so fuel economy, and some people might not love the styling, but hey, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right?
That's right, and ultimately those things might not matter much depending on what you're looking for in a bike.
Exactly. If you prioritize performance, agility, and value, those drawbacks might not even be a factor. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to, this is the FZ-09, the right bike for you.
That's the question every rider has to answer for themselves.
We've given you the information, the comparisons, the insights. Now it's up to you to make that decision. Go check out the FZ-09 in person, see how it feels, sit on it, take it for a test ride, talk to other riders who own one, get their perspective, and most importantly, listen to your gut.
The best bike for you is the one that speaks to your soul.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So on that note, we're going to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of the 2024 Yamaha FZ-09. We hope you learned something new, maybe got inspired to try something different. And until next time, keep the rubber side down and ride safe.